Captain Vex of the Xelari Defense Corps stood at the command observation deck of the orbital station Nexus Prime, his four eyes blinking in rapid succession as he scanned the organized chaos below. The station, a marvel of Xelari engineering, was designed with precision. Every corridor, every docking bay, every operational sector adhered to a strict, color-coded hierarchy that ensured every soldier knew their place. Yet despite the station's rigid efficiency, Vex found himself unsettled. The humans, with their unpredictable behavior and lack of visible rank indicators, continued to defy Xelari expectations. He had studied their military structure extensively, analyzing their insignias, uniforms, and command signals, but even after months of observation, he struggled to fully grasp the nuances of their hierarchy. The arrival of the human battle cruiser Vanguard Prime was meant to be a standard joint operation, a routine exchange of tactical data and personnel. But as the ship docked and its commander disembarked, Vex's antennae twitched with unease. The human officer, clad in a dark blue uniform adorned with insignias Vex had catalogued, was directing his crew with sharp, efficient commands. The Xelari officers stationed nearby, bound by their own rigid command protocols, acknowledged his authority with a respectful nod. Yet, just as the operation seemed to proceed without incident, a new figure emerged from the docking bay's shadows. A shorter human, dressed in a pristine white coat, strode onto the scene with an air of quiet confidence. Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly. There was no rank insignia, no visible indicators of authority. And yet, the battle cruiser's commander, a decorated officer by all accounts, halted mid-sentence and turned toward the newcomer. "Doctor," he greeted, his tone carrying a note of deference. "Commander," the human replied, glancing at the crates being unloaded. "These wounded need immediate triage. Your cargo can wait." Vex's antennae quivered. This was an unthinkable breach of protocol. In Xelari command, only those with the proper color-coded insignia could override a superior officer's orders. And yet, the human commander merely nodded. "Understood," he said, signaling his crew to redirect their efforts. Vex tapped furiously on his datapad, recording the anomaly. He had encountered this before. Humans with no visible rank who wielded undeniable authority over their military personnel. Were they some form of hidden elite? A secret caste within the human hierarchy? Or was there an entirely different logic at play? He had seen humans defer to these figures without question, even in the presence of higher-ranking officers. It was as if their authority was embedded in something beyond the physical, beyond the structured insignia and color-coded command chains that governed Xelari society. His assistant, Junior Observer Trell, sidled up beside him. "Sir, should we update our report?" he asked, antennae twitching with curiosity. Vex hesitated, watching as the white-coated human took charge of the situation, directing medics and issuing orders that were followed instantly. "Yes," he murmured. "This is something new. Something we don't yet understand." Captain Vex's datapad trembled slightly in his grasp as he observed the scene unfold. The white-coated human, whom he had tentatively labeled as Doctor Elena Marquez based on prior interactions, moved with an effortless command that defied every logical framework he had built around human military structure. Without insignia, without formal rank, she had just redirected a decorated officer's entire operation. Vex's antennae twitched in rapid succession, a telltale sign of deep intellectual agitation. Dr. Marquez was issuing directives with swift precision, her voice carrying an unshakable certainty that immediately silenced any potential objections. "Marines, secure the perimeter and establish a triage zone," she commanded, gesturing toward a cleared section of the docking bay. "Medical personnel, start stabilizing the wounded. I need a full status report from the med bay in 10 minutes. The human commander, who had been in the middle of coordinating logistics, simply nodded. "Yes, Dr. Marquez," he replied, signaling his crew to shift their priorities. There was no hesitation, no challenge to her authority, just immediate compliance. Vex turned to Trell, his antennae still vibrating with unease. "Explain this," he demanded. "According to our data, this individual does not hold a military rank. Yet she is issuing orders that supersede those of a ship's commander. Trell's mandibles clicked nervously. Perhaps she's a civilian consultant with special privileges, he suggested, antennae drooping slightly. We have documented cases where human military personnel defer to civilian experts in specific scenarios. Vex shook his head. That does not account for the speed and totality of the compliance. This is not a consultation, it is a direct override. He tapped on his datapad, bringing up a schematic of the human military's known command structure. She's not even listed in the official personnel hierarchy, and yet her orders are obeyed as if she were a supreme fleet marshal. Below, the scene grew even more perplexing. A human admiral, clad in the resplendent golden armor of their highest military rank, arrived to assess the docking operation. Vex expected the admiral to reassert control, to remind the humans of the proper chain of command. Instead, the admiral merely acknowledged Dr. Marquez with a respectful nod. "Doctor," he said, "we have received word of the casualties. I assume you have a plan." Marquez barely looked up from her tablet. "Yes, you'll deploy your medics to the triage zone and ensure all personnel maintain a safe distance from the wounded until they're cleared for transport. And I need decontamination protocols ready in case of exposure." The admiral, a being whose presence alone could command entire battalions, simply replied, "Understood." Vex's antennae flattened against his head. This was not just an anomaly, it was a paradigm shift. He had spent years studying human military behavior, convinced that their structure was chaotic yet decipherable. But this was something entirely different. "We need to observe this further," he muttered, his voice tinged with academic excitement. "This could be the most significant discovery about human command since we learned they use coffee to maintain operational efficiency." Captain Vex's antennae twitched as he processed the scene before him. The admiral had acknowledged Dr. Marquez not as a subordinate, not as a civilian consultant, but as someone whose authority was unquestionable. It was a direct challenge to everything he understood about military hierarchy. In the Xelari Defense Corps, rank was absolute. Each color-coded insignia dictated who could command whom, and no deviation was tolerated. Yet here, in the heart of human military operations, authority seemed to function on an entirely different principle. "Trell," he said, his voice clipped with urgency, "update the research logs. We must reassess our prior assumptions about human command structure." Trell, antennae still drooping from the shock of the admiral's compliance, hesitated before responding. "Sir, are we certain this isn't an isolated incident? Perhaps Dr. Marquez holds some secret rank or has been granted special permissions beyond our knowledge?" Vex shook his head, mandibles clicking in frustration. "That's the problem. We don't know, and that is unacceptable." He tapped on his datapad, bringing up footage from past joint operations. "We have documented 47 such cases since the alliance was formed. In each instance, these doctors have issued orders that superseded standard command protocols, and yet none of them wear insignia. They are not listed in the official military hierarchy. And yet, when they speak, even the highest-ranking officers comply." Trell's antennae quivered. "But how? Without visible rank indicators, how do humans determine who holds authority?" Vex exhaled sharply, mandibles tightening. "That is precisely what we must uncover." He gestured toward the docking bay, where Dr. Marquez was already coordinating with human and Xelari medics. "She is not just issuing orders, she is trusted to make life or death decisions without hesitation. Even the admiral, whose rank surpasses that of the human commander, deferred to her expertise." Trell's antennae drooped further. Could this be some form of mind control? A subtle influence we have yet to detect? Vex considered this, recalling past theories his team had proposed. The idea had been tested, of course. Xelari scientists had scanned for psychic emanations, for biochemical triggers, for any sign that humans were subtly manipulating their superiors. But the results had been inconclusive. "Possibly," he admitted, though his own antennae curled in doubt. "But if so, it is unlike any mind control we have encountered. It does not appear to be coercive. It is Instinctual. Trell tilted his head. You mean the humans choose to obey them? Vex nodded slowly. It seems so. And that is what makes this discovery so fascinating. Their system is not based on rank alone. It is something deeper, something we have yet to understand. He tapped his mandibles against his exoskeleton, a habit he had developed when deep in thought. This could redefine our entire approach to joint operations. If we can grasp the mechanics of this authority, we may be able to integrate it into our own command structure. Trell hesitated before speaking. Sir, should we inform Central Command? Vex's antennae flickered. Not yet. We need more data. But mark my words, this Doctor phenomenon is not just a curiosity. It is a fundamental aspect of human military efficiency that we have been blind to until now. The joint training facility on Tarsus IV was designed to test the compatibility of Xelari and human military forces in high-stress scenarios. It was a state-of-the-art installation, with reinforced corridors, emergency bunkers, and a meticulously organized command structure that both species had agreed upon. Captain Vex watched from the observation deck as the drill commenced. Xelari soldiers in their color-coded exosuits moved in perfect synchronization, their formations precise and unyielding. The humans, by contrast, seemed to operate in a state of controlled disorder, yet their efficiency was undeniable. For the first few minutes, everything proceeded according to protocol. The simulated battlefield was a collapsed mining complex, and both forces were tasked with extracting civilians and neutralizing hostile threats. Vex noted how the human officers issued orders, how their soldiers executed them with a mixture of discipline and adaptability. It was a system that defied Xelari logic. No rigid hierarchy, no clear indicators of rank, yet an uncanny ability to function without hesitation. Then, the crisis struck. A sudden real-time emergency alert blared through the facility's speakers. Alert. Radiation leak detected in Section 5. Immediate evacuation required. The drill halted instantly. Xelari officers activated their emergency protocols, directing troops toward the designated evacuation routes. But before the process could fully commence, a new voice cut through the controlled chaos. Hold on. Everyone, stop. Dr. Marquez's voice, calm yet unmistakably commanding, silenced the room. She emerged from the adjacent corridor, her white coat unblemished despite the urgency of the situation. Without hesitation, she strode toward the nearest human officer, a major adorned with the insignia of tactical command. You're sending them through the main corridor, she stated, eyes scanning the evacuation plan. That's the path that runs past the reactor core. If the leak is active, you're leading them straight into the contamination zone. The major, a man accustomed to unquestioned authority, blinked. We've been trained to use the primary routes in evacuation drills, he said, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Dr. Marquez crossed her arms. Then you're about to fail this one. Redirect everyone to the maintenance tunnels, now. The major hesitated for only a second before nodding. You heard the doctor. Change course. Maintenance tunnels. Vex's antennae shot up. This was not part of the drill. The humans had abandoned their established protocol in favor of an improvised directive from an officer who held no visible rank. He watched as the troops obeyed instantly, Xelari soldiers folding their extra appendages to navigate the tighter tunnels. Trell, standing beside him, was practically vibrating with confusion. Sir, this violates the Unified Command Agreement, he whispered. The human officers should be following standard evacuation procedures. They just changed course based on the doctor's word alone. Vex tapped his mandibles against his exoskeleton, his mind racing. And yet, they are saving lives, he murmured. This is no mere anomaly. This is a pattern. His antennae twitched with anticipation. This was precisely what he needed. A real-world crisis where the doctor's authority was tested beyond the confines of structured drills. He activated his recording equipment, determined to capture every moment. Back aboard the Xelari flagship, Virex Prime, Captain Vex and his research team gathered in the debriefing chamber, their antennae twitching with excitement as they analyzed the footage from the radiation leak incident. The holographic display flickered with multiple angles, humans and Xelari alike abandoning their carefully rehearsed evacuation protocols in favor of Dr. Marquez's impromptu directive. Every recorded moment was a puzzle piece in an enigma they had yet to solve. Replay the moment she redirected the Major, Vex instructed, antennae pulsing with tension. The footage rewound and played again. Dr. Marquez stepping forward, issuing a single command, and the Major obeying without question. There is no visible rank insignia, no formal acknowledgement of superior status, and yet the human commander deferred to her instantly. Junior observer Trell, antennae still vibrating with confusion, hesitated before speaking. "Sir, could this be a form of covert authority? Perhaps these doctors hold some classification beyond our knowledge, hidden ranks within their military." Vex considered this before shaking his head. "Unlikely. We have access to their military records. Dr. Marquez is a civilian contractor, not an officer. There is no official designation granting her command privileges." He tapped on his datapad, bringing up a list of theories. "We must consider alternative explanations." Trell leaned forward, antennae curling with curiosity. Perhaps their system of authority is based on experience rather than rank. Vex's antennae flickered thoughtfully. That is one possibility, but how do they determine whose experience outweighs the chain of command? In Xelari military structure, rank is absolute. A supreme fleet marshal outranks a general, regardless of experience. Trell's mandibles clicked nervously. Maybe the humans have a different way of measuring authority. We've observed that in medical emergencies, these doctors are treated as the highest-ranking individuals on site, even above admirals and generals. Vex nodded. Precisely. And that leads us to a troubling realization. Human authority is not fixed. It is fluid, shifting based on situational necessity. He gestured toward the theory board, where a growing list of hypotheses was beginning to take shape. Theory 1. Dr. Marquez is part of a secret warrior priest caste, operating outside the known military hierarchy to maintain balance. Theory 2. The white coat is not merely a uniform but a symbol of an ancient, unspoken power, perhaps tied to human mysticism or ritualistic practices. Theory 3. Human military personnel are conditioned from youth to obey medical figures, instilling an instinctual deference that overrides traditional rank. Theory 4. The doctors possess an undetectable form of mind control, possibly linked to their consumption of stimulants like coffee, which heightens their influence over others. Theory 5. The human medical insignia, specifically the serpent-wrapped staff, holds a deeper symbolic significance that grants them automatic compliance. Trell's antennae drooped. "This is all speculative," he admitted. "We need more data." Vex's mandibles clicked in agreement. "Then we shall gather it." He turned toward the observation deck, watching as Dr. Marquez moved through the medical bay, issuing orders with the same quiet confidence that had baffled him since first contact. This phenomenon is not just an anomaly. It is a fundamental aspect of human command structure. We must understand it before we can fully integrate our forces. The crisis escalated faster than anyone had anticipated. The radiation leak had been contained, but an unforeseen complication emerged. Several of the soldiers who had been exposed were showing signs of a rapidly progressing neurological disorder. The Xelari medical teams, trained in their own rigid protocols, hesitated to act without formal approval from their chain of command. Dr. Marquez, however, had no such hesitation. "This isn't just a radiation exposure incident," she announced, her voice carrying across the medical bay as she reviewed the diagnostic reports. "There's an unknown contaminant interacting with the radiation. If we don't act now, we're looking at a full-scale neurological collapse." A Xelari medical officer, clad in the silver-blue insignia of senior rank, stepped forward. "Dr. Marquez, without confirmation from our Supreme Fleet Marshal, we cannot authorize experimental treatments," he said, antennae twitching with unease. Marquez barely looked up from her tablet. "And if you wait for confirmation, half your fleet will be incapacitated before the day is out." She turned sharply toward the human commander overseeing the operation. "Admiral Dexter, I need full command of medical resources across all vessels. We have to establish a coordinated response, or this thing is going to spread beyond this base." Admiral Dexter, A towering figure with the traditional gold insignia of human command nodded without hesitation. "You have it, Doctor. All ships, this is Admiral Dexter. Redirect all medical personnel and resources to Dr. Marquez directives. No questions, no delays." Captain Vex watched from the observation deck, antennae vibrating with tension. The Admiral had just ceded control of the entire fleet's medical operations to a civilian. Even more shocking, the Xelari Supreme Fleet Marshal, who had arrived moments later, did not object. Instead, he turned to his own officers. "You heard the doctor. Do as she says." Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly as he recorded the moment. "This is unprecedented," he murmured. "She is not just issuing orders. She is orchestrating a multi-species medical response in real time." Trell, standing beside him, antennae drooping in confusion, whispered, "Sir, how is this even possible? The humans have no formal medical command structure, and yet their officers are obeying her instantly. Even our own Supreme Fleet Marshal is deferring to her." Vex exhaled sharply. "Because she is right," he admitted. "She has identified a threat that our own rigid protocols would have delayed responding to. And she is acting with the precision of someone who has done this before." His antennae quivered with academic urgency. "We must continue our study. This isn't just about hidden rank or unspoken authority. It is about something deeper. Something that allows a single individual to command the actions of an entire fleet without question." Captain Vex stood in the medical bay of the Virex Prime, his antennae twitching with anticipation as Dr. Marquez entered, still wearing her pristine white coat despite the chaos of the previous hours. She carried her tablet with practiced ease, eyes scanning the monitors displaying the neurological readings of the affected soldiers. Without preamble, she gestured toward Vex. "You wanted answers," she said, not as a question, but as a statement. "So let's talk." Vex straightened instinctively. "Dr. Marquez, I have observed numerous instances where individuals like yourself issue commands that supersede both human and Xelari military structure. I must understand. How does your authority function?" Marquez smirked, setting her tablet down. "Authority isn't about rank, Captain. It's about responsibility." She tapped the screen, displaying a series of medical reports. "When a soldier is dying, the person who knows how to save them is the one who gives the orders. It doesn't matter if I'm a civilian, or if I outrank someone in the traditional sense. What matters is that I know what needs to be done, and I do it." Vex's antennae flickered. "But how do humans determine who has this authority? Is it based on experience? Training?" Marquez nodded. "Exactly. We train for years, decades, sometimes, before we're allowed to make life or death decisions. That training is our rank. When I tell an admiral to shut up and sit down, it's not because I'm higher than them in some abstract chain of command. It's because if they don't listen, they'll either die or cause unnecessary harm." She turned to face him fully. "You Xelari value hierarchy, but in medicine the hierarchy has to shift. If you don't let the people who know take charge, you lose lives." Vex's mandibles clicked in thought. "So, it is not about power. It is about necessity." Marquez smiled. "Now you're getting it." She turned toward a nearby Xelari medic who was adjusting a diagnostic scanner. "You, adjust that frequency. It's off by 0.3 cycles. And someone get me coffee. Real coffee, not that instant sludge." The medic nodded instantly, making the adjustment without question. Vex's antennae stiffened. "You issued a command to a Xelari officer, and he obeyed." Marquez shrugged. "And knows I'm right. That's all that matters." Vex exhaled sharply. "Then perhaps we must reconsider our own rigid structures. If saving lives requires flexibility, then perhaps the chain of command should be fluid, not fixed." Marquez's smirk returned. "Now that's the real revolution." The debriefing room aboard the Virex Prime was filled with the soft hum of holographic displays and the rhythmic clicking of Xelari mandibles as officers reviewed the footage from the crisis. Captain Vex stood at the center, antennae twitching with excitement as he summarized the findings. "What we witnessed was more than a medical emergency," he said, mandibles clicking in emphasis. It was a direct challenge to our understanding of command structure. Dr. Marquez did not issue orders as a superior officer. She did so because she understood the situation better than anyone else present. And the humans, and our own, responded accordingly. Commander Drell, a high-ranking officer known for his rigid adherence to Xelari protocol, leaned forward. His antennae, usually held in perfect symmetry, drooped slightly in contemplation. "You are suggesting," he said carefully, "that we should permit deviations from the standard chain of command based on situational expertise?" Vex nodded. "Precisely. In our military, rank is absolute, but in human operations, authority shifts depending on who holds the critical knowledge. We must adapt if we are to function effectively in joint missions." Before Drell could respond, the room's communication system crackled to life. "Dr. Marquez to all medical personnel," her voice announced. "Effective immediately. All medics are authorized to override standard evacuation routes in medical emergencies. Your duty is to save lives, not follow outdated protocols." A murmur spread through the gathered officers. The directive was an outright deviation from the unified command agreement. And yet, none of them objected. "Sir," Trell interjected, antennae quivering with newfound understanding. "What if we created a hybrid system? A command structure where medical personnel are granted situational authority based on their expertise?" Vex's antennae flickered in approval. "A brilliant suggestion, Trell. We must formalize this in our Joint Operations Manual. And," he added with a slight grimace, "we must also address the coffee issue." Dr. Marquez's voice came through the speakers again. "Also, someone tell the mess hall to stop serving stimulant-laced protein paste for breakfast. It's not helping anyone's stress levels." A few officers exchanged glances, then Commander Drell sighed. "Added to the list," he muttered. Vex tapped on his datapad, updating their research notes. "This," he said, antennae vibrating with academic satisfaction, "is the most significant shift in our alliance yet. We are not just sharing technology or tactics. We are reshaping our very concept of authority." As the Virex Prime drifted in orbit above Tarsus IV, the Xelari officers gathered in the newly established Medical Priority Command Center, a facility that now bore the unmistakable influence of human medical doctrine. The once rigidly structured halls of the ship were now adorned with white-coated human and Xelari doctors, their presence alone enough to shift the flow of operations. It was no longer unusual to see a Supreme Fleet Marshal step aside for a junior medic, or a decorated captain humbly obey a doctor's directive without hesitation. The Alliance had not merely adapted to this new paradigm, it had embraced it. Captain Vex stood beside Dr. Marquez as she reviewed the latest medical reports. "Your system is unlike anything we have encountered," he admitted, antennae vibrating in thought. "It defies traditional hierarchy, yet it functions with remarkable efficiency." Marquez smirked, sipping from a Xelari-designed coffee dispenser that had been retrofitted to accommodate human preferences. "That's the thing about hierarchy," she said. "It works when the rules are simple, when everything goes according to plan. But in a crisis, the person who knows how to fix the problem is the highest authority, rank be damned." Vex considered this, mandibles clicking in contemplation. "We have formalized this in our new Joint Operations Manual," he said, gesturing toward a nearby terminal where the updated protocols were displayed. "Medical personnel are now granted situational override privileges in emergencies. And," he added with a slight grimace, "we have installed premium stimulant dispensers in all medical bays." Marquez laughed. "I knew you'd come around eventually." She set her coffee down and turned to face him fully. "But you're still missing something, Captain. It's not just about authority, it's about trust. Every time I tell someone to do something, it's because I know it's the right call, and over time, they learn to trust that." Vex's antennae twitched. "Trust," he repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. "A concept not easily quantified in military operations." Marquez shrugged. "Maybe not in your system, but in ours, it's everything." She tapped the terminal, pulling up a record of past joint drills. "You've seen it yourself. When I tell an admiral to move, it's not because I have power, it's because I know what happens if they don't." Vex exhaled sharply, mandibles tightening. Then perhaps, he said slowly, we must learn to measure authority not in color-coded insignia, but in the ability to save lives. Marquez grinned. Now that, she said, is a command structure worth adopting. As she turned to leave, Vex's antennae twitched once more. Doctor, he called after her, one final question. What do we call this system? Is there a human term for it? Marquez glanced back over her shoulder, her smirk widening. We call it listening to the person who knows what they're doing. Vex watched her go, antennae vibrating with a mixture of amusement and admiration. The alliance had changed in ways he had never anticipated. And perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, that was the greatest discovery of all.